Are you unintentionally putting your child's education on the back burner? In today's video, we're going to talk about what happens if homeschool days are getting pushed aside. If you're calling it homeschooling, but you're not checking your child's work, you're not following up on lessons or narrations, and you're just kind of coasting along, not holding your child to any standard, then you might be letting your child's education slide. And I say this with love and as somebody who is making big plans for the next school year, because this happened to me this past school year and I know that things need to change. So if you want to hear my story and how I'm going to change things, maybe you're doing some of these same things too, then you definitely want to stay tuned to this video. Hi there and welcome back to my channel, and welcome if you are new here. My name is Joni and I am the mom behind simplelivingmama.com, where we help moms simplify life, home, and homeschool. I am a homeschool mom to 7 kids. We've been homeschooling for 12 years now, and I want to talk about something that's been on my heart here lately and something that I have noticed I need to be working on as a homeschool mom, because things have kind of slid to the back burner, and I have some valid excuses and reasons for that, but I have noticed that I need to personally make some changes, make some shifts, so I can make sure that my children are getting in the academics that they need to get in. So in today's video, I'm going to talk about that with you, and I'm going to share with you, first of all, why did I decide to homeschool my kids? One of the reasons that I decided to homeschool my kids is that I wanted to give them a better education than what they could get in the public school system. If that's one of the reasons that you also decided to homeschool your kids, one of the things that you really need to be paying attention to is whether or not you are sticking to that principle, that desire to give your kids a better education, because it is so easy as a homeschool mom to let things slip, to let things go by the wayside, to call things an education. And while I firmly do believe that there is so much education in life skills, that our children still need to be developing their academics. If we purchase a lot of curriculum for them, we purchase the books for them, we need them to actually be doing the work. And I have seen time and time again in my own homeschool where I think my kids are getting things done and they really aren't. So we're going to talk about how we can make sure that our kids are staying on track and they are getting the education that we do desire for them. So let's talk about the real issue. The real issue is that most homeschool moms are not lazy. What they are is overwhelmed and distracted. Now, last year, I was very overwhelmed and distracted with other responsibilities. And I talked about in my previous video that we need to treat our job as a homeschool mom as a profession. It's not a hobby. It's not something that we can just put on the back burner and do when we feel like it, because our kids' education is going to suffer, right? So I had way too many responsibilities and distractions outside of my household. And I know that that caused some issues. So let's talk about that. What are some of the issues that I noticed? I thought one of my children who works independently was doing his written narrations. I went and looked through his notebook recently, and I discovered that some days he didn't do his written narrations at all, and then other days he did his written narrations and they were not up to par. They were not up to his ability to narrate. So we had a conversation and I said, you know what? I take some responsibility for this, because I was not checking that work. I was not going back and asking him to show me his narration every single day after he finished it. I was not following through. That's my fault. And that is something that's going to change in our homeschool, because kids are kids, right? They're not going to want to do the hard thing. Most kids are not naturally going to want to push themselves and excel. Sometimes they need a parent behind them to give them a little bit of a push. And that is one of the things that I've noticed, is that while my kids are definitely naturally curious, they have their own interests that they are excelling in, there are some areas that they just don't care about. And for this child, writing is one of them. And I know that he can produce better work, and I know that this is something that I need to push him to do. If I don't, let's say I just let him do what he wants to do. He's very strong-willed. If I don't, I feel like I am running the risk of him just being apathetic throughout the rest of his life. Now, I feel like if he has a goal in mind and something that he really wants to do, he's going to do it. But if he is used to pushing himself a little bit more because maybe mom was behind him and pushed him a little bit more when he didn't want to do it, then maybe as an adult he will desire to push himself to a little bit more and hold himself to a higher standard because it was happening throughout his childhood. So that is one thing that I've noticed. Let's see. Some other things that I have noticed is that sometimes kids would say that they had completed assignments and they would check them off, and I would go back and realize that they did not actually complete the assignments. So these are different things that I have found were happening while I was busy and I was distracted with other things that were taking my attention outside of the house. So how am I going to change this going forward? I have 3 things that I'm going to do almost on the daily that are going to help make sure that my kids are actually getting this work done that I assign to them. Okay, so number 1, we're going to have daily discipline. Now, we had actually gotten into a really good rhythm and routine of getting up around the same time every day and starting our morning time, and that daily discipline of getting that done really motivates the kids. Once we started doing it and we were doing it for a couple of months, it was something that they just kind of expected. And if we had a day where we didn't do morning time for whatever reason, I would have kids asking me like, hey, why are we not doing morning time? So having this consistent start time and this daily discipline of coming together at the beginning of the day and doing these different assignments that I have for us to do together during morning time is something that we're going to continue to do. So that's something that we were doing really, really well. Now, the thing that we didn't do as well was when we broke into our independent groups to start doing our work independently. Like I said, some kids were dawdling or not doing what they were supposed to do. So we are going to establish the daily discipline of making sure that everybody has their schoolwork and everybody is getting started on something. So even though I may have to sit down with another child to start homeschool, I'm going to make sure that my other kids are actually sitting down with their work and getting started as well. And that's going to become a daily discipline. They are going to understand that they're going to move from morning time straight into independent lessons and not do something else just because mom is out of sight and working with another child. So that is one thing that we're going to make sure that we do. We're going to make sure that the kids are actually getting those math lessons done, and I'm going to be checking narrations. This is, like I said, this is something that I struggled with last year, but it needs to be done. Now, my younger kids usually narrate orally, but those older children who are doing the written narrations, I'm going to be checking those narrations because, yeah, like I said, it did not go as well last year as it should have gone, could have gone, would have gone had I been more consistent with that. So that leads me back into this whole idea of consistency. So that's number 2. We're going to have daily discipline, number 1, and number 2 is we're going to have consistency in our homeschool. We're going to have this designated start time. I'm not an early morning mom, but we typically would start around 8:30 or so. So 8:30 to 9 o'clock, we're going to start, and then we're going to consistently move into independent work for everyone, and I'm going to make sure everyone has something to do. And number 3 is presence, and that goes back to me making sure that these lessons are getting done. I'm not just handing them a checklist of assignments and expecting them to do them without any follow-up. We're going to be checking narrations, we're going to be checking understanding, we're going to make sure that the kids are getting, when they do have tests, so my older kids do have a few tests with different curriculum that they do, we're We're gonna make sure that they are not cheating on those tests, because that does happen if you're not paying attention, moms. No matter how much of an angel you think your child may be, there is a temptation, if you're not watching, for them to cheat. So that's something you may want to keep in mind. We're going to make sure that nobody's cheating on their test, and we're going to make sure that everybody gets everything done that needs to get done. So the practical shifts that I'm going to make in my homeschool, and if you're struggling in this area, you can make these shifts as well. We're going to be making sure that we're checking work and we're following up. We're going to make sure that we are following up on those narrations, making sure that the kids are actually writing them if they have written narrations, and listening to oral narrations. This is going to require a lot more from me. This is going to require me to be more organized. This is going to require me to set aside time blocks to make sure this stuff gets done. I've always been a more relaxed homeschooler in the past. This is something that you hear about a lot on social media. You hear about it a lot at homeschool conferences. As your kids get older, being so relaxed can let things slide. So we start off very, very gently in the early years. But I have found if I'm not following up with my kids and making sure that they're getting stuff done, then a lot of times things aren't going to get done. So I am going to have to be more disciplined with my time and the way that I manage and organize things. And I'm going to share that in a future video, because chances are I probably am teaching more kids than you. If I'm not, then maybe this will help. Well, maybe you've got some advice for me, or what I'm doing can help you out too. But even if you're teaching 3 kids, still, you have to make time to check that work, check those narrations. And I'm going to talk about time blocking and what I'm going to do differently this coming up school year in a future video. Okay, we're going to talk about testing informally. I don't give grades to my younger kids, but that doesn't mean that we don't test. Especially, a lot of times people think in a Charlotte Mason homeschool that it's not as rigorous, the kids aren't getting as much of a quality education. The thing is, Mom, that you have to make sure that your kids are understanding the material, and we do have Charlotte Mason exams. So at the end of a term, I will have my kids tell me what they've learned about, and I want to hear this. I want to make sure that they can tell me the different things that we've actually learned about and talked about throughout the school year. My older kids, my kids who are in high school, and even my middle schooler will have written exams where they're going to have to tell me what they've learned about. And I've done really well with that for my high schoolers. Like I said, that middle school child, he's been slipping a little bit, but I'm catching it now. He's not just going to slip through the cracks. So we're going to work on that. And then, of course, some of their curriculum does have tests involved, their math and their science especially. And I like that because those 2 subjects are not something that I'm particularly strong in, which is why I outsourced them to begin with. So they will have tests in those subjects. And then when my older children take online courses, they have tests and different things that they do with those. So that definitely helps me a little bit. So I'm not stretched so thin, but we're going to be doing a little bit more testing just to make sure that the kids are actually learning. I mean, this is what you need to do, is you need to make sure that your kids are actually learning. And it doesn't have to be in a super formal way. It can be, especially when your kids are younger, just very informally asking them to explain what they've learned. Okay, another thing is, don't be afraid of holding your kids to a standard. So if you know your child is capable of more than what they are showing you, encourage that. Tell them, look, I know you are capable of writing a paragraph for this narration and you've barely written a sentence. I know you can do more than that. I know that you can tell me what you read about. Finally, if things have gotten chaotic, you need to be rebuilding your routine. And this is what I am doing here in my homeschool. I am making a major shift. I am throwing out all of the distractions that I had going on earlier in the past school year, and I am refocusing and, like I said, starting a new routine, starting to build in time blocks, and I want to make sure that all of these things get done. So if you've fallen into unintentional habits, you can definitely course correct. It's not too late. You can still homeschool with joy and have high expectations for your kids. Now, not every child is going to grow up and go to an Ivy League college. I know some of my kids are probably not even going to be college bound, and that's okay. I actually had this discussion with a couple of my kids the other day. They were asking me why I'm teaching them Shakespeare, and I get lots and lots of questions from them about, why do I have to learn this? I'm not going to need this for my job. Because they have certain ideas of what they want to do when they're adults, and Shakespeare is not going to be part of it, right? So I said to them, while you are here in my home, I am going to teach you about all kinds of things. I want you to be a well-rounded, educated person. You may not use these things in the future. You may not remember some of these things in the future. But every idea that I expose you to helps you grow as a person. So that is why we learn about things that you may not use in your future career. But you are going to be a more educated, well-rounded individual because I have taught you so many of these other things. And we've had these discussions, and we are learning and growing together. So that is why I am teaching you these things, and that is my hope for you and your future. Now, does that really resonate with a 12-year-old? Maybe not. But I do hope one day all my kids can look back on all of these things that we've done together, and they can realize that, hey, my mom was trying to show us this whole world that we would have never gotten to experience had we not had her as our teacher and had her leading us in our education. One of the reasons that I did choose to homeschool is because there were so many things that I didn't learn in public school that I would have loved to learn. So I would have loved to have learned more about art and artists and different countries, and I would have loved to have read more books about other cultures and just other things like that, things that I'm not going to necessarily use in a career, but they are things that make me a better person. So anyway, that's my little spill about that. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to the video. It is my hope and prayer that I can encourage you along in this homeschool journey. So I will see you guys in the next video.